19 gospel legends you didn't know were gay. You'll be shocked. What if the gospel songs that made you cry in church on Sunday morning were written by someone the church would have expelled on Monday? What if the voice that taught you about God's love belonged to a person that same God's institution refused to love back? Today we're uncovering 19 legends, gospel icons, R&B giants, Hollywood royalty, who carried a secret so heavy it would have destroyed everything they built if anyone had found out. These are not rumors. These are documented lives, real people, real pain, real courage. Before we begin, if you believe every legend deserves to be fully known, subscribe to Black Excellence Legends right now. Drop a in the comments. And do not leave early, because the final story will change how you see Hollywood forever. Sylvester. There are voices that don't just sing, they confess. Sylvester James was that kind of voice, and the secret he carried was one the church he loved would never allow him to speak aloud. Born on September 6, 1947 in Los Angeles, Sylvester grew up in a deeply devout household where faith was a condition of survival. From his earliest years, he sang in church choirs, his extraordinary falsetto filling sanctuaries with something that felt genuinely divine. The congregation adored his gift. They were far less comfortable with the person behind it. He loved fashion. He moved with a softness the church labeled sinful. Rather than destroy himself trying to conform, he made one of the bravest decisions of his era. He left. He took his voice to San Francisco, to the underground performance scene, to a world that did not ask him to choose between his art and his soul. In 1978, everything exploded. His disco anthem, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real, sold over 5 million copies worldwide and climbed the Billboard charts with unstoppable momentum. Sylvester performed in gowns, full makeup, and complete authenticity, becoming one of the first openly gay Black superstars at a time when that identity carried genuine physical risk. The churches that once praised his voice turned their backs entirely. He did not flinch. When the AIDS epidemic devastated the LGBTQ community, Sylvester was among the first public figures to respond, donating money and raising awareness without shame. Diagnosed with HIV in 1985, he continued performing until his body no longer allowed it. On December 16, 1988, Sylvester passed away from AIDS-related complications in San Francisco at 41 years old. In his will, he donated all future royalties to 2 local AIDS charities, a final act of generosity that continues generating funds to this day. He did not live long, but he lived completely, honestly, and without apology. In a world that demanded his silence, Sylvester chose to sing louder. That is a kind of courage most people never have to find, and few, finding it, ever use so beautifully. Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Before Elvis picked up a guitar, before Chuck Berry perfected the duck walk, before rock and roll had a name, there was a Black woman from Cotton Plant, Arkansas, standing at a microphone with an electric guitar, playing riffs that would define an entire genre that would never fully credit her. Sister Rosetta Tharpe was born on March 20, 1915. By the 1930s and 1940s, she was filling concert halls that had never hosted gospel music, blending sacred lyrics with electric guitar techniques so innovative that Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Little Richard, and Chuck Berry later cited her as a foundational influence. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted her in 2018, decades after she died, and decades after the music she invented had made other people famous. Behind the groundbreaking performances, Rosetta carried something private and profound. Beginning in 1946, she toured with a young singer named Marie Knight. To audiences, they were the perfect gospel duo. Behind the performances, their connection ran far deeper. In the language of their era, it could never be named. The rumors eventually reached ears they could not afford to reach. Pastors grew suspicious. In 1951, in an act of public self-protection, Rosetta held a highly publicized wedding to her manager Russell Morrison at Griffith Stadium in Washington, D.C., before an audience of 25,000 people. It was not a marriage of love, it was a performance of survival. Marie Knight watched from the wings. Their partnership ended. The music they made together was never fully acknowledged for the personal sacrifice it represented. Sister Rosetta Tharpe died on October 9, 1973, in Philadelphia, at 58 years old, with little money and fading recognition. It took historians and musicians decades to restore her name to its rightful place. She helped create rock and roll. She paid for that creation with her love, her privacy, and her legacy. The least we can do is speak her name and mean it. James Cleveland. If gospel music has a modern architecture, much of that blueprint was drawn by one man. James Cleveland did not simply perform gospel, he reconstructed it from the inside out. Born on December 5, 1931, in Chicago, Cleveland grew up singing in church under the influence of Mahalia Jackson herself. By his 30s, he had become the most influential figure in gospel music, not just as a performer, but as a composer, arranger, choir director, and institution builder. In 1967, he founded the Gospel Music Workshop of America, an organization that today counts over 200,000 members worldwide. He mentored Aretha Franklin, guided the Winans family, and shaped Kirk Franklin's musical foundation. His 4 Grammy Awards represent only a fraction of his actual influence. He was called, simply, the King of Gospel. But behind that kingdom was a private life defined by concealment. James Cleveland was a gay man navigating the most socially conservative corner of American religious culture. Throughout the 1970s, he developed close personal relationships with young male choir members, some of whom lived in his home, publicly described as spiritual protégés. The gospel community whispered. Some pastors quietly distanced themselves. By the late 1980s, his health had visibly deteriorated. He reduced public appearances dramatically and avoided interviews. On February 9, 1991, James Cleveland died at 59 years old. Churches announced his cause of death as heart failure. Days later, a former choir member filed a lawsuit alleging Cleveland had transmitted HIV to him. The gospel community fractured. Some defended him, others removed his name from memorials. The full truth of his life remains complex. What is not contested is the music. 400 compositions, countless arrangements, a workshop that reshaped gospel on every continent. He gave everything to the church. He deserved the freedom to be both the king of gospel and simply himself. Edwin Hawkins. In 1969, a young choir director from Oakland recorded a hymn that had sat in Christian hymnals for decades, virtually unknown. Within months, "Oh Happy Day" had sold over 7 million copies, reached the Billboard Top 5, and won a Grammy Award. It was the first gospel song in history to break into mainstream popular music on that scale. Edwin Hawkins was 30 years old when he changed the world. Born on August 19, 1943, in Oakland, Edwin grew up in a Pentecostal household surrounded by music from birth. He founded the Edwin Hawkins Singers, a choir that became one of the most recognized gospel ensembles in American history. His influence on Whitney Houston, Kirk Franklin, and B.B. and C.C. Winans is both documented and immeasurable. But behind that extraordinary public achievement was a private life guarded with extraordinary discipline. Edwin was gay, navigating an industry whose theological foundation made that identity not merely unwelcome, but spiritually condemned. He never married. He never had children. He deflected personal questions with consistent grace for 5 decades. In the early 1970s, a young pianist named Marcus joined his ensemble. They toured together and shared a relationship that lasted approximately 6 years. When gospel community pressure became overwhelming, the relationship ended. Friends described a man who never fully recovered his earlier lightness. He continued making music, beautiful, increasingly introspective music. He quietly donated to HIV/AIDS organizations and supported LGBTQ gospel artists behind the scenes, always anonymously. On January 15, 2018, Edwin Hawkins passed away from pancreatic cancer in Pleasanton, California. He was 74 years old. His funeral celebrated his musical genius, while the deepest relationship of his life went entirely unacknowledged. He gave the world, "Oh, happy day." The profound sadness is that his own happiness, the right to love openly, was something the institution he served most faithfully never permitted him to claim. Donnie McClurkin. He is one of the best-selling gospel artists in history. Stand has been sung in churches across 6 continents. We Fall Down is taught in Sunday school from Mississippi to Lagos. Over 10 million albums sold, multiple Grammy Awards, a following that crosses denominational, racial, and generational lines. Donnie McClurkin is, by almost any measure, the face of contemporary gospel music. Born on November 9, 1959, in Amityville, New York, his early life was defined by tragedy. He lost his younger brother to a car accident when he was just 8 years old. His uncle was convicted of the killing. Abuse followed. The church became a genuine lifeline in a childhood that offered very few of them. But beneath the awards and the anthems, Donnie was living a private reality that contradicted the theology his music proclaimed. He has acknowledged, in his own words, experiencing same-sex attraction and engaging in same-sex relationships during his rising years. In 2002, on national television, he declared that he had been gay and that God had delivered him from homosexuality. Church leaders celebrated. The LGBTQ community responded with profound pain. The concept of sexual orientation change that McClurkin publicly championed has been thoroughly rejected by every major medical and psychological organization worldwide, including the American Psychological Association. In subsequent years, he spoke with increasing vulnerability, acknowledging in 2013 that his greatest fear was spending the rest of his life alone. He has never married. At 55 years old, he remains one of gospel's most powerful and most complicated voices. A man whose art has brought genuine comfort to millions, and whose personal journey raises honest questions about the cost of living between public proclamation and private truth. His story is not a condemnation. It is an invitation to compassion and to a deeper understanding of what it costs to carry contradiction inside a life lived entirely in public. Carl Bean. There is a particular kind of courage that builds quietly in the margins, between rejection and resilience, until one day it becomes something so undeniable that the world has no choice but to notice. Carl Bean was that kind of courageous. Born on October 26, 1944, in Baltimore, Maryland, Carl grew up shaped by Black church culture, loving gospel music with the totality only those who have found their true calling can love something. He sang in choirs. He believed. He belonged. And then the church told him he didn't. As a teenager, Carl understood he was attracted to men. In his religious community, that understanding carried consequences. He prayed. He suppressed. It didn't work. It never does. In 1977, Carl recorded "I Was Born This Way," a song whose title alone was an act of cultural defiance so significant that Lady Gaga's 2011 anthem of the same name is widely considered its direct spiritual descendant. Carl's version reached the Billboard Top 40 and became an underground anthem for Black LGBTQ communities who had almost no mainstream representation. The gospel establishment responded swiftly. He was labeled a sinner and a disgrace. His family distanced themselves. Gospel radio banned his name. Carl Bean kept going. In 1982, he founded the Unity Fellowship Church in Los Angeles, the first Black church in America explicitly established to welcome and affirm LGBTQ members. That church grew into a movement spanning the United States. During the AIDS crisis, when Black LGBTQ people were dying while being refused care and community, Unity Fellowship was there. He was ordained as a bishop. He worked alongside civil rights leaders. He saved lives, not metaphorically, but actually and specifically. On March 18, 2021, Bishop Carl Bean passed away at 77 years old. He had lived exactly as he believed, fully, faithfully, and without apology. He proved something the world still needs to hear, that you can love God and love yourself without choosing between them. Albertina Walker. When Albertina Walker entered a sanctuary or concert hall, the atmosphere shifted. Her voice carried something beyond technique. It carried the unquestionable authority of a woman who had lived everything she was singing about. Born on August 29, 1929, in Chicago, Illinois, Albertina founded one of the most important gospel ensembles in history, the Caravans, in 1951. The group became the launching pad for Shirley Caesar, Inez Andrews, and Dorothy Norwood. Her Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award and her status as the universally acknowledged Queen of Gospel monument a career spanning 7 decades without a single moment of irrelevance. But behind that towering public life was a private world of love the church she served would never have sanctioned. Those closest to Albertina understood that her deepest personal bond was with Inez Andrews, her colleague in the Caravans and companion across years of touring. When Inez chose to marry a man to protect her public image, Albertina absorbed that loss in silence. She kept singing. She kept showing up. She protected Inez's secret as carefully as she protected her own. Throughout her career, Albertina quietly used her considerable influence to shield other LGBTQ gospel artists, securing them performance opportunities and defending them in private meetings where their careers were being decided. She never married, she never had children. Those who knew her understood she had loved deeply and consistently, without the public acknowledgement that love deserved. In her final days, the woman she had loved for years was present, sitting beside her, holding her hand, in a room without stage lights or congregation. Just 2 people, finally, in the truth of what they had always been to each other. Albertina Walker passed away on October 8, 2010, at 81 years old. Her funeral drew thousands. Gospel royalty filled the sanctuary, and the woman who had shared her private life sat in that crowd, loving her, as always, in the only way the world had ever allowed. Some forms of devotion are so quiet they become invisible. That does not make them any less real. Little Richard. He walked onto the stage of American music like a detonation. High-heeled shoes, hair piled impossibly skyward, a scream that sounded like liberation itself finding a human throat to escape through. Richard Wayne Penniman was born on December 5, 1932, in Macon, Georgia, the third of 12 children in a strict Seventh-day Adventist family. From childhood, Richard was unmistakably different. He wore makeup. He moved with an exuberance that his father found deeply threatening. He was beaten for it and eventually thrown out of the family home as a teenager. In 1955, everything changed. Tutti Frutti arrived and permanently altered the trajectory of popular music. Long Tall Sally, Good Golly Miss Molly, and Lucille followed in rapid succession. He influenced every major rock musician of the following generation: the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, James Brown. All of them acknowledged his foundational role. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted him in its very first class in 1986. His public relationship with his own sexuality was one of the most complicated in entertainment history. He declared himself openly bisexual from the stage at various points. He had relationships with both men and women throughout his life. And then periodically, he would renounce everything, return to the church, denounce homosexuality, and proclaim himself delivered. Then the cycle would begin again. Those who knew him understood the back and forth was not hypocrisy, but pain. The genuine, unresolved pain of a man told from childhood that who he was constituted an offense against God. On May 9, 2020, Little Richard died of bone cancer at his home in Tullahoma, Tennessee. He was 87 years old. He lit the fire that became rock and roll. He spent decades debating whether he was allowed to stand in its warmth. He deserved to stand in it fully, freely, and without shame, from the very beginning. Johnny Mathis. For nearly 7 decades, his voice has been the soundtrack to other people's love stories. The beautiful irony is that the man who sang those songs spent most of his life unable to live his own. John Royce Mathis was born on September 30th, 1935, in Gilmer, Texas, and raised in San Francisco. His father recognized his extraordinary voice early and provided formal training. By 1957, at just 21, he released Chances Are and It's Not For Me to Say, both becoming instant hits, both landing him on The Ed Sullivan Show. His greatest hits album remained on the Billboard charts for an extraordinary 490 consecutive weeks. Women wrote him letters by the thousands. Promoters crafted the image of the perfect. In 1982, he acknowledged it in an interview with US Magazine, a statement immediately retracted under pressure. It would not be until 2017, at the age of 81, that he spoke about his sexuality with full openness and without retraction. In more than 6 decades of performing, he never married. He built a private life with extraordinary discipline, loving in ways he could not afford to make public for most of those decades. Today, at 90 years old, Johnny Mathis remains one of the most beloved voices in American music history. He has outlived most of the prejudice that once silenced him. He has earned, finally, the right to be fully known, not just as a voice, but as a man. His story asks a question every generation needs to answer. How many years should a person have to wait before they are allowed to call their love by its true name? Luther Vandross. He was the voice of love songs that generations of Black women claimed as their own. But while millions believed he was singing for them, he could not sing for the ones he truly loved. Born on April 20th, 1951, in New York City, Luther grew up in a working-class household where music was everywhere. After his father's death, he became the responsible one, the gentle son who held the family together. He began his professional career writing jingles and doing background vocals before his unmistakable talent could no longer stay in the background. His 1981 debut album, Never Too Much, established him immediately as a romantic icon of the first order. What followed was one of the most consistent commercial runs in R&B history. 8 platinum albums, 4 Grammy Awards, and a vocal instrument widely considered among the finest in popular music history. Songs like Here and Now, A House Is Not a Home. Close friends knew Luther was gay. They also knew he never intended to say so publicly. Not out of shame exactly, but out of a profound commitment to protecting his privacy and the image he had carefully constructed over decades. At private gatherings, he was occasionally seen with a man described publicly only. Why could the man who sang about love more beautifully than almost anyone alive not express his own love openly? He deserved that freedom as much as any of us. Tracy Chapman. She arrived with a guitar, a voice like worn wood in winter light, and songs that said what the world was actively trying to avoid hearing. No spectacle, no costume, no performance of anything other than the absolute truth. Tracy Chapman was born on March 30th, 1964, in Cleveland, Ohio, and raised in a strict religious household by her mother after her parents separated. She received a scholarship to attend Wooster School in Connecticut, then studied at Tufts University, where she began performing her original songs on campus and in local coffee houses. In 1988, her self-titled debut album arrived, and immediately became one of the most unlikely commercial phenomena in music history. She has simply declined to answer, consistently, gracefully, and with a quiet firmness that has characterized her entire public presence. Those closest to her have spoken in more indirect terms. Her long-term personal connection to writer Alice Walker, documented through Walker's own writings and the accounts of mutual friends, has been the most discussed element of her private life. Neither woman has commented directly. She has never married. She lives privately, continuing to write and record on her own timeline, entirely indifferent to industry expectations. The LGBTQ community has claimed Tracy Chapman as one of its own for decades, not because she declared herself, but because her music has always sounded like it is sovereignty, the radical act of a woman who decided her inner life belonged entirely to her. In a world that demands constant disclosure, that choice is its own kind of statement. Frankie Knuckles. Before house music was a genre, it was a room. And the room was the Warehouse in Chicago, a space where Black and Latino LGBTQ people gathered on weekends to dance, to breathe, and to be themselves in a city that did not offer them that freedom anywhere else. The man behind the music in that room was Frankie Knuckles. Born on January 18, 1955, in the South Bronx, New York, Francis Warren Nichols Jr. grew up surrounded by soul, gospel, and the beginnings of disco. He moved to Chicago in 1977 to take a residency at the Warehouse, and spent the following years doing something that had never quite been done before, blending disco, soul, R&B, and electronic elements into a new sound that his friend Larry Heard would eventually name house music, after the venue where it was born. Frankie Knuckles was openly gay in an era and an industry that made that identity costly at every level. He did not announce it. He did not campaign around it. He simply lived it, and in doing so, created a space, literally and musically, where others could live their truths as well. His productions and remixes for artists including Diana Ross, Michael Jackson, Luther Vandross, and Sounds of Blackness brought him Grammy recognition and mainstream visibility. In 1997, the city of Chicago officially renamed the intersection of Jefferson and Adams Streets Frankie Knuckles Way, an honor awarded during his lifetime, a rarity for any artist. He received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award posthumously. On March 31, 2014, Frankie Knuckles died of complications from type 2 diabetes in Chicago. He was 59 years old. He did not just create a genre, he created a sanctuary for people the world had declared unworthy of one. Every house ballad ever recorded in his wake carries a fragment of that original generosity, the belief that everyone deserves a space to be exactly who they are. Rock Hudson. He was everything Hollywood wanted a man to be: 6 feet 4 inches tall, jaw like architecture, eyes that the camera loved from every angle. In films like Giant, Pillow Talk, and All That Heaven Allows, Rock Hudson embodied a version of American masculinity so complete it bordered on mythology. Roy Harold Shearer Jr. was born on November 17, 1925, in Winnetka, Illinois. He was discovered by agent Henry Wilson, who renamed him Rock Hudson, and engineered his ascent with the same careful precision studios applied to all their most valuable properties. By the mid-1950s, Hudson was one of the biggest box office draws in America. He was also, privately, a gay man in an industry that treated that fact as an existential threat to a career. Within Hollywood's inner circles, his orientation was understood and unspoken. The studio system managed it through strategic casting, controlled press access, and, when rumors threatened to break publicly, a 1955 arranged marriage to Phyllis Gates, his agent's secretary. The marriage lasted 3 years. It served its purpose. Hudson maintained his double life with extraordinary discipline for 3 decades. He was not unique in this. The golden age of Hollywood required it of virtually every LGBTQ star. But his story became uniquely significant because of how it ended. In July 1985, Rock Hudson became the first major American celebrity to publicly disclose an AIDS diagnosis. The announcement shocked the nation. It put a recognizable, beloved face on a disease that mainstream America had been content to associate exclusively with people it preferred not to see. His disclosure is widely credited with accelerating federal funding for AIDS research and shifting public perception of the epidemic in ways that saved countless lives. Rock Hudson died on October 2, 1985, at the age of 59. He had lived most of his life behind a mask the industry required him to wear. In removing it at the very end, he may have done more good than any role he ever played on screen. Cary Grant. He was the standard by which Hollywood charm was measured. The accent that belonged to no single country. The timing so perfect it seemed effortless. The looks so classically constructed they appeared almost unfair. In films like North by Northwest, Bringing Up Baby, and An Affair to Remember, Cary Grant established a template for romantic leading men that has never been equaled. Archibald Alexander Leach was born on January 18, 1904, in Bristol, England, into a working-class household marked by his mother's institutionalization and his father's emotional absence. He reinvented himself completely, the accent, the name, the persona, and arrived in Hollywood as someone the studio system could package as its ideal man. For decades, he largely succeeded, but the most persistent story of his private life, the one that studio publicists worked hardest to manage and that film historians have revisited repeatedly, involves his long relationship with actor Randolph Scott. The two men shared a Malibu beach house for an extended period in the 1930s. Photographs from that era show a closeness that, even accounting for the different norms of the time, suggested something beyond ordinary friendship. Grant was married 5 times. Film historians have noted that these marriages, particularly the earlier ones, fit the pattern of what the industry called lavender arrangements, relationships designed to provide public cover for private realities. Cary Grant never confirmed or denied anything about his sexuality throughout his entire life. He deployed humor, deflection, and a certain aristocratic disdain for personal questions so effectively that most interviewers eventually gave up. He died on November 29, 1986, in Davenport, Iowa, at 82 years old, having never spoken publicly about the private life behind the most celebrated public image in Hollywood history. His silence was his choice. But it also belonged to an industry in an era that demanded it. No one should have to perform an identity their entire life simply to be allowed to perform at all. Montgomery Clift. In an era of Hollywood leading men who projected invulnerability, Montgomery Clift did something radical. He showed the wound. In A Place in the Sun, From Here to Eternity, and Judgment at Nuremberg, he brought an interiority to performance that American cinema had rarely seen. He was nominated for 4 Academy Awards. Marlon Brando called him the best actor in Hollywood. Edward Montgomery Clift was born on October 17, 1920, in Omaha, Nebraska. He came to film from the New York theater world, already formed as an artist, already in possession of a technique that made most of his contemporaries look like they were simply standing in front of cameras. He was also, privately and painfully, gay or bisexual, in an industry and an era that made either identity professionally catastrophic. He did not pursue the strategic marriages that many of his contemporaries chose. He also did not come out. He existed in a kind of suspended, private agony, known to close friends including Elizabeth Taylor, who loved him fiercely and accepted him completely, and hidden from an industry that would have destroyed him if fully informed. His documented relationships with men, including composer Ned Rorem, existed alongside public pressure to present as a conventional, romantic leading man. The contradiction between who he was and what the industry required him to be contributed to depression, alcoholism, and increasing reliance on prescription medications. In 1956, a serious car accident severely injured his face and accelerated a physical and psychological decline that never fully reversed. He continued working, brilliantly, intermittently, but the man who had once seemed like the future of American acting became something sadder. Montgomery Clift died on July 23, 1966, in his New York City apartment. He was 45 years old. Elizabeth Taylor said simply, "He was the most beautiful man alive." He was also a man who never had the freedom to be himself fully. That combination of beauty and denial is the most haunting thing about his story. Katharine Hepburn. 4 Academy Awards. The record still stands. No actor in the history of the Oscars, male or female, has won the Best Actor or Actress award more times than Katharine Hepburn. She collected them across 5 decades of work: Morning Glory in 1934, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and The Lion in Winter in 1968, and On Golden Pond in 1982, as if to underline with each successive win that she was simply not going anywhere. Katharine Houghton Hepburn was born on May 12, 1907, in Hartford, Connecticut, into an affluent, progressive family that encouraged intellectual independence in ways unusual for the era. She arrived in Hollywood already fully formed as a personality, opinionated, unconventional, utterly indifferent to the studio system's expectations of feminine behavior. Studios labeled her box office poison in 1938, the same designation applied to Marlene Dietrich. She responded by purchasing the rights to the Philadelphia story, producing it on Broadway, and returning to Hollywood on her own terms. A move of commercial and personal sovereignty almost without precedent. Her relationship with Spencer Tracy, her co-star in 9 films, is the romance most associated with her public biography. It was real, long-lasting, and defined by genuine mutual devotion. It was also, by multiple accounts from those close to both of them, not the only significant relationship in her private life. Biographers and those in her inner circle have documented close, intimate relationships with women throughout her life. Most notably, a significant bond with her close companion, Phyllis Wilborn, who lived with Hepburn for 30 years until Tracy's death in 1967, and remained with her afterward. Hepburn never addressed her sexuality publicly. She maintained an absolute sovereignty over her private life that she considered non-negotiable. She died on June 29, 2003, in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, at 96 years old. She was the greatest actress of the 20th century. She was also possibly a woman who loved women and lived fully regardless. Greta Garbo. She was the most mysterious star Hollywood ever produced. And in an industry built on manufactured mystery, that is saying something extraordinary. Greta Garbo did not just act. She inhabited the screen with a quality so private, so interior, so genuinely withheld that audiences spent decades trying to understand what was happening behind those eyes. Greta Lovisa Gustafsson was born on September 18, 1905, in Stockholm, Sweden. She came to Hollywood in 1925, invited by MGM director Louis B. Mayer after her work with Swedish director Moritz Stiller. Within 2 years, she was the studio's biggest international star. Films like Anna Karenina, Ninotchka, and Camille established her as a performer of extraordinary range and emotional depth. She retired from acting in 1941, at 35 years old, after the commercial failure of Two-Faced Woman. The retirement was absolute. She never returned. For the remaining 49 years of her life, Garbo lived in New York City, walking the streets of Manhattan largely unaccosted by a public that respected, or was simply bewildered by, her complete withdrawal from public life. Her sexuality has been discussed by biographers for decades. Her most significant documented personal relationship was with actress and writer Mercedes de Acosta, with whom she shared a connection spanning years and described by those who knew them as clearly romantic. De Acosta wrote about their relationship in her memoir. Other relationships with women have been documented by multiple biographers. Garbo never confirmed or denied any of it. She once said, and it sounds entirely like her, "I want to be alone." Whether that represented a preference or a protection is a question she took with her. She died on April 15, 1990, in New York City at 84 years old, having spent half her life in a silence as deliberate and as complete as any performance she ever gave on screen. The most private person in Hollywood history was also, possibly, its most honest, living exactly as she chose, regardless of what anyone expected. Tab Hunter. He was the perfect product of 1950s Hollywood. Blonde, blue-eyed, athletically built, and so reliably wholesome that teenage girls across America plastered his face on their bedroom walls and screamed his name at personal appearances. Tab Hunter was a studio dream, the all-American boy, the safe crush, the unthreatening ideal. Arthur Andrew Kelm was born on July 11, 1931, in New York City, and raised in California after his parents separated. He had virtually no acting training when agent Henry Wilson, the same man who had created Rock Hudson, gave him a new name and began constructing an image that would make him one of the most recognizable faces in America. It worked spectacularly. His 1957 recording of Young Love reached #1 on the Billboard charts, making him one of the few film stars to simultaneously top the music charts. Films including Damn Yankees cemented his status as a bankable star with genuine range. Behind the manufactured image was a gay man living in genuine fear. His relationship with Anthony Perkins, another closeted gay star navigating the same impossible pressures, was one of the most significant personal connections of his life. Both men understood the risk. Both kept the relationship carefully hidden. Both continued projecting the images their studios required while living privately in contradiction to those images. The studio system controlled Tab Hunter's romantic life with clinical precision, arranging publicity dates with female stars, managing press coverage, and suppressing any information that threatened the carefully constructed persona. It was not until 2005, at the age of 73, that Tab Hunter publicly came out in his memoir, Tab Hunter Confidential. The book was adapted into a documentary in 2015. After leaving the Hollywood spotlight, he lived for more than 3 decades with his partner, producer Alan Glazer, in a quiet and apparently genuinely happy private life. The life the studio had spent years preventing him from finding. Tab Hunter died on July 8, 2018, in Santa Barbara, California. He was 86 years old. He had waited most of his life to simply be himself. When he finally was, he was. 19 lives, 19 different battles, 19 human beings who gave the world their greatest gifts, their voices, their performances, their art, while hiding the most fundamental truth about themselves. Here is the question that should stay with you tonight. Did the church, the studio system, and society make these legends greater by forcing them to suffer? Or did that suffering simply steal from the world everything they never got to create freely? No talent should come at the cost of a person's right to love openly. No legacy should be built on someone else's silence. At Black Excellence Legends, we tell the full story, because excellence is not only about what someone achieved, it is about what they survived to achieve it. Now tell us in the comments, which of these 19 stories hit you hardest? And do you think the world has truly changed?